I hope you were paying attention because Mario Cristobal just told you what he's seeing from his team so far, but why it's not enough.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, and on today's loaded episode of Locked On Canes, we'll talk about how competitions are evaluated and how starters are crowned, because some college football fans out there seem to think that coaches already know who their starters are heading into spring. If that's the case, your program has a big problem, and we'll explain why. We'll explain how Miami does it. We will talk about practice standouts because Miami had another padded practice on Tuesday. The week is really heating up. But Mario Cristobal's insight on his players and on his intensity, because again, I think Cristobal on Tuesday really painted an excellent picture about where his team is right now, but where it ultimately needs to be. Mario said, quote, asked what he's seeing from his team. This is now the third week of spring ball. We're 9 practices in. The pads have been on for the last several. He says, what do we see? A lot of growth development in our team and program, and we need to see more, Cristobal said. I want to see more from this team, more physicality, more discipline. There were some really bright moments today on both sides of the ball, and then some senseless errors we need to get better at. And by the way, Mario was very animated about those errors. We'll get to it. He says we want to see more physicality, durability out of the defensive backs. We want to see more consistency out of the receivers, more toughness, more of that dog mentality we have become accustomed to on the perimeter from all skill positions. Now, I think this was evident throughout the playoffs last year and late in the regular season. There are few programs, if any, in the country that emphasize physicality and toughness more than this Miami team does. Not to say it was perfect last year, right? You had a lapse in the middle of the season that caused you to lose a couple of games you shouldn't have lost. You weren't quite there with Indiana, who was the class of the country last year, and you came up short in the national championship game. But I think what you saw in the Texas A&M game, the way Miami outmuscled and overwhelmed that team in really bad, crazy weather with the wind, Miami won that game with their physicality. Against Ohio State, I don't think it was ever more clear throughout the season, the way Miami was able to overwhelm Ohio State's offensive line, the way they were able to put Julian Sayin in hell for the first half of that game. Physicality. Ole Miss game. Physicality. You had some firepower in that game as well, right? Few programs emphasize physicality more than Miami, and Cristobal has that personality. This is what makes him a darn good football coach. He's never satisfied. I mean, the practices that I've been out to this year, especially since the pads have come on, this is a different Miami from the ones we used to cover 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 years ago. Like the last couple of years, 2025 and so far in 2026, you're really starting to see this team look different physically and the depth and competitive levels, but Mario wants that to be really the carrot that's always dangling and you're never quite there with your physicality and your intensity. And when he talks about the perimeter, okay, something Miami's been able to do is really well these last couple of years, and I think receivers coach Kevin Beard is very much in lockstep with Mario on this. Your receivers need to put their bodies on the line and block. They need to be selfless. I mean, how many times did we see Malachi Toney like blocking guys who were twice his size on the other side of the football to help his running backs gain extra yards, right? C.J. Daniels, same thing, was a tremendous blocker this past year, and we expect more of that. Daniels obviously heading to the NFL. We expect more of that from Malachi Toney this year and for all the new receivers who are here. And I think Cooper Barkate is someone who's probably going to excel at this, and he's practicing very well for those who have asked. But, Cam Vaughn, Dre Jacobs, who transferred in for the incoming freshmen, you need to see that tone set in practice, and you need to be physical, right? You're not just thinking about running your route and catching footballs. You need to be blocking and put your body on the line. Defensive backfield, to replace a guy, and I thought Steve Kim on our episode yesterday said it perfectly well. Probably the toughest guy to replace on that defense is Keontae Scott, right? The way his physicality was always up to par. You need to have your defensive backs play that way. And Miami's got guys who can get dirty and get fit. Dirty not in a illegal way. I mean dirty like down and dirty and get physical. I believe Omar Thornton coming in from Boston College can do a lot of that. Xavier Lucas and O.J. Frederic, Damari Brown are all very physical. I think Bryce Fitzgerald is very capable of playing that way as well. But you need that standard to be set with the intensity in practice time and time and time again. And coolest thing I thought that came out of Tuesday's practice, and it goes to show you, like, Miami's not there yet. They're not there right now with the intensity in practice because Mario was getting animated. He was getting a little upset during some of these blocking drills when he wasn't getting enough from some of his offensive linemen. And it's okay to get beat in practice. It's just how you recover from that and how you learn from that. But at times, Jaden Wilkerson gets beat. Mario gets animated. You got to do that rep again. Do it better the second time. It happened with some of your blocking tight ends getting beat on certain plays. Instances where Luka Gilbert or Jack Nickel miss blocks against their defensive counterparts. You've got to do that rep again. Mario Cristobal. I mean, there was a rep that Luka Gilbert did over again. I think it was against Jordan Campbell. Was much better the second time. And Cristobal said, next time, throw him into the effing canal. Talking about the canal that's outside the indoor practice facility. That's the sort of physicality and intensity that Coach Cristobal wants. And, I think it is important to say, I don't think you will ever hear Mario come out of a practice and say, you know what? Today we nailed it. Today it was perfect. Today we were exactly as physical as we want to be. No matter how high this team reaches that level of intensity, Cristobal's going to keep raising that bar even higher. Perfection will probably never be achieved, nor should it be. I don't know if perfection is possible in the game of football, but in the words of Mario Cristobal, it's not quite there yet. The consistency, the physicality, the intensity, he still wants that to go up. Mario commented on his offensive line. I like the way they're gelling, talking about the first teamers, but you have to find more guys. You want to be at 8, 9, or 10 by the time the season rolls around. We're banged up a little bit. I think Samson Okunlola is the best example of that, but he says nothing major that won't be ready to go in another couple of weeks or so. He says our size, girth, mentality from a regiment, blueprint culture, it's very aggressive form of O-line play. And yeah, we all know the challenge this year with 4 new starters on the offensive line is going to be getting everybody on the same page from a chemistry point of view. That's so critical with the offensive line. That's why, there's a prestigious offensive line award called the Joe Moore Award that's given not to a single player, but to an entire unit. That's the only unit in football that has an award specific to an entire group. It's because you have to play with that 5 men, 1 mind mentality. And, in terms of O-line, I think I feel pretty good right now, in my humble opinion, on who your starting 5 is going to be. I know Samson has been banged up, but I expect Okunlola to be there. I think he's going to be one of your best 5. Jackson Cantwell, he's been practicing tremendously well. And I think with Cantwell, I can stop saying for a true freshman, because oftentimes we'll say Cantwell's doing really well for a true freshman or for a guy who's only been in the building for a few months. I think we can stop adding the asterisk and just say Jackson Cantwell is out there playing like a grown man. Had some great reps against Armando Blunt and some other defensive line standouts on Tuesday. Cantwell's going to be one of your best 5, probably your left tackle starter. Matt McCoy, who's been a leader of that group, probably the starter at the other offensive tackle spot. Ryan Rodriguez is having a really good spring. I think he's going to seize his opportunity at center. I think Max Buchanan is going to seize an opportunity to start. You talk about the guys who could emerge, because Cristobal said it, Alex Mirabal has said it. You don't just want a good starting 5. Like, you want to have 8, 9, 10 guys for your rotation who are all capable of being starting caliber players. I think Jamal Merriweather, the Georgia transfer, can be among that group. S.J. Alofi-Tuli is having a really good spring. I know he's still, I guess, technically a little undersized, but he uses his body and his leverage so well, and he plays so hard. I think Ben Congdon, another true freshman, can be part of that group. Jaden Wilkerson, Reese Woodrow, true freshman, friend of the show who's playing well. I want to talk about the D-line when we come back because we got some insights on the interior guys from Damian Lewis, co-defensive line coach who works with the inside guys when Jason Taylor works with the edge rushers. And I think there we're starting to get a pretty good idea of the four-man rotation, but there are some who can crash that party. Plus, a true freshman defensive back, one we haven't talked about a whole lot, is out there snagging interceptions in practice. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. UCLA made history by winning its first NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship, dominating South Carolina 79-51. The Bruins controlled the game from start to finish with elite defense and balanced scoring, finishing the season 37-1. Star center Lauren Betts was named Most Outstanding Player, leading a team effort that capped a 31-game winning streak. Under head coach Corey Close, UCLA secured a landmark title that has been decades in the making. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes. I'm coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
If you consume Locked On Canes content every day, you need to join the Everydayer Club. I provide exclusive content there, episodes of the Canes Colada, which you can only get on the Everydayer Club, all access tier, exclusive newsletters, one-on-one texting with me, so many other great benefits. And also next week, we're going to be raffling off for the Everydayer Club members only a pair of tickets to the spring football game. So if you're available on April 18th, but you haven't been able to get tickets for that because they did sell out very quickly, we're going to have tickets to raffle off to Everydayer Club members. So you want to click the link in the show notes below or go to lockedoncanes.supercast.com and join the Everydayer Club today. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Not only did we hear from Mario Cristobal this week, but defensive line coach Damian Lewis, who focuses on the interior guys, former great Miami defensive tackle in his own right. You've got new players in the portal, and just from where I sit, I would expect that the portal guys who came in, Jarquez Carter from Ohio State, who's been practicing really well, he's kind of gotten better as spring ball has gone on, and Keona Davis from Nebraska, especially because he's got so much experience. He was a full-time starter there last year. I don't think he'll be a full-time starter here, but a rotational guy. Like, I would handicap the two of them to probably be your best options to be the third and fourth defensive tackle in no particular order, but there are others pushing, like Micah Newton, heading into his second year, I believe, has been practicing well. But on Jarquez Carter and Keona Davis, Damian Lewis said, everything with these guys has been good. Guys like that, they came from completely different systems than what we play, so it's learning how to play our style of football. They got that down in the first week, he said. Now it's just about executing the details, and they're doing a good job of locking in. On Jarquez Carter, he said specifically, he's doing a great job, has gotten better. He's learned the system. He's a quick twitch guy, and now he can use that in the game. He's really improved a lot since he got here. I really love the way he played in high school. What I saw of him in high school is coming out on film now. And Jarquez Carter, that's a cool story where, sometimes you come in second or third for a player when they're coming out of high school, and then the magic of the transfer portal, they leave the place that they're at, and then you wind up getting them the second time around. Because Jarquez Carter, of course, he chose Ohio State out of high school, but when he decided to take his talents elsewhere after this past season, he said, why not go to the team that just knocked Ohio State out of the playoffs? But Carter, who also spoke to the media this week, has really emphasized how well Miami's defensive scheme suits him, right? I think he's going to have opportunities to really reach his full potential with guys like Damian Lewis and Jason Taylor, and of course, Corey Heatherman. What did I forgot what Steve King, he called them Heatherman's Hellraisers or something. I got to go back, and he had a great term, Steve, who was on the show yesterday, for Heatherman's defense. I want to say it was Heatherman's Hellraisers, so I'm going to go with that for right now. Jarquez Carter gets to be a part of that group now. Damian Lewis talked about Ahmad Moten, who decided to come back to Miami when he could have gone pro, and I think that was the right decision for Ahmad. He's got an opportunity to raise his draft stock this year after really ascending in the second half of last season. And you love how players like Ahmad Moten and Mark Fletcher on offense are now making that decision to come back when in previous years, players like that 10 out of 10 times used to leave early. Like rarely ever. But now you've got a special culture and a team that can contend for a championship again. And these players want to be part of it for one more year. You could say the same thing about Akeem Mesidor last year. Didn't have to come back. He did, and he rose his draft stock in a big way. Damian Lewis said about Ahmad Moten, he had more to give in college. For him, it's about finishing it and what that means for him as a leader of this football team. For him, as he's helping this D-line group continuing to grow, he said. On Justin Scott. Now, Justin Scott, you guys know my feeling on this. I think Justin Scott's a future first-round draft pick. I think we started to see that late in the season last year when he was getting more time in the defensive tackle rotation. He's a former five-star recruit out of high school a couple of years ago. Last year was his second year. He started to reach that season ago. Here's what Damian Lewis had to say about him. He said early in the season was a little rough, but as he got his footing, understood more, he started playing really well, in particular after the Florida game, he said about Scott. It's like he got better and better every week. And then when David Blay went down injured, he had to become a starter, Scott. He really elevated his game in a really good way. He's a super attention to detail kid, watches a ton of film, he studies. For him, it's just about going out and executing what he's taught, and he's doing it at a high level. And then I mentioned a guy like Micah Newton is someone who could maybe crash that party and get into that rotation. He said he's improved. He's doing well. For him, it's just about continuing the details. He's still a young player, just continuing to work, to stay locked in, to focus and practice. He's been improving. I'm really proud of where he is right now. And I will note, there's plenty of time for like the freshman defensive lineman, but Logan Nagel is a name we haven't mentioned enough. He's been practicing well. So, that's someone who could be a very big part of the future for that group, if not necessarily the present. So the defensive tackles are developing nicely. There's two on the field at the same time in Miami's four-man front. If you have at least four guys, maybe five, you can confidently rotate between. They're going to be in good shape, that group. And I know the truth teller is very proud because he takes pride in nothing more than the best defensive tackle play. I think Miami's going to have that this year. All right, so some practice notes. Quarterback, Darian Mensah. It's hard at this point to talk about him without reaching a point where, am I praising the young man too much? Because when it comes to his accuracy in practice, we're talking Cam Ward territory with how he's performing out there in spring ball so far. Rarely does he ever place a football wrong, right? And I'm sure most quarterbacks around the country, including the other quarterbacks on Miami's roster, will occasionally place a football wrong. You throw it behind your receiver. You make just a bad throw that goes for an interception. You don't really see any of that from Mensah. And, the media viewings are limited, of course, but rarely do you ever see the guy place a football wrong. His accuracy on corner of the end zone fades. It's really something special. And then, of course, with Mensah, we'll see some of this stuff more when the actual real football is being played, because you don't really hit quarterbacks in practice, just so you know. Quarterbacks are designated, do not jostle these guys too much. They are a protected species in practice. But, once we're going to be seeing him in games with the escape ability, that kind of sixth sense in the eyes and the back of his head that he has to elude pressure, the athleticism to pick up yardage on the ground. But the arm talent you could see is elite, and you could tell it's a testament to his hard work. There seems to be a consensus among the media that, Luke Nickel he clearly looks like your number 2 quarterback, that he has, he separated himself from Judd Anderson and, Darian Coleman. You have every reason to redshirt him. Coleman throws probably the prettiest ball. He's got the quickest release. He's got the most zip on his throws. Like, the arm talent for Coleman is uncanny, but he's so young and he still needs to put size on his frame. You have every reason to have him take a redshirt year this year. Remember, even when you redshirt, you're able to get into a few games. So, I don't know. I'm kind of hoping Miami blows out FAMU so badly that we get to see all the quarterbacks play in that game, because I'd love to see a Darian Coleman cameo. But you redshirt him, and then Luke Nickel seems to be the clear number 2 right now, and he'll have obviously an opportunity, as will Coleman, as will Judd, a year from now, potentially to compete for the starting spot. We'll see whether Miami goes into the transfer portal again, but we don't have an answer to that question yet. That'll be answered in due time. I mentioned a young defensive back who we don't talk about enough, Camden Portis, son of Clinton. He had an interception in Tuesday's practice. J.J. Dunnigan is a guy who he's practicing like a beast. Of course, we talk about him a lot. We've talked about Jalen Waters. We've talked about Jontavius Wyman. But Camden Portis is someone else who cannot be ignored. He's been out there practicing hard and practicing well. First INT, I'm sure, of many. I'm not even sure if that was his first INT in practice, but first one that was noticeable at least. Yeah, I mentioned Jackson Cantwell is playing like a grown man out there. Talked about Cristobal getting animated with the offensive line. He needs to see them play with the intensity and the physicality. And listen, when you're going up against Miami's D-line, when you're going up against the Damon Wilsons and the Third Scroggins and the Hayden Lowe's of the world, you're going to get beat sometimes in pass rushing reps and blocking drills. It's going to happen, right? But, Coach Cristobal wants to make sure that if his O-line, if they're getting beat, they better be putting in the best possible technique and intensity to make sure it doesn't happen often and doesn't happen again. I can't stop saying nice things about Josh Moore at receiver, especially since pads have come on. He's looked like a beast out there. He seems to, the term mossing. He's mossing guys in practice day in and day out. We've seen a lot of that from Josh. On the receivers, a good note I saw from Matt Shodell at Kane Sport talking about special teams drills, which there have been a lot of. Shodell says also keep an eye out for the wide receiver room having a big impact in the return game. He says early punt return reps during the special teams period included Vance Spafford, who I think is probably the fastest player on the team or close to it, Cooper Barkate, Cam Vaughn, and Dre Jacobs in that order, and of course Malachi Toney also included in the return group. So we'll see if some of Miami's dynamic playmaking receivers also make an impact in punt returns this year. Malachi Toney could very well end up being the regular guy at that again, but will we see others step into that role also? All right, so, I got another question about whether or not the U is back that I want to give you my spin on this. Plus, a major college football account posted something, and I have no problem with the post, but some of the responses are a little head-scratching as to whether or not coaches already know who their starters are by spring. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new Locked On Canes. Hey, what if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. Guys, I always knew the game, but I never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. But now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futured and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Oh, yeah, we're also brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. when the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours just made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Canes. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure for your next listen you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I go around the conference. Basketball's over. We're back in full football mode now. Locked On ACC is available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So I like this question, although I have a very clear answer for it, from the voice of college football on X. And I've been on their show before. Mark does a really good job, and I did a kind of a spring football preview with him going back around a month or two. But he asked, hey, coaches already know their starters by spring, yes or no? And surprisingly enough, there are college football fans out there, hopefully not Miami fans because you guys know better, but there are college football fans out there who think the coaches already know their starters. Then it's just kind of a dog and pony show. You know who your dudes are. Everybody else is playing for backup roles. Okay, so my answer would be, if you think your college football coaches already know who their starters are in spring, if the answer to that question is a yes for you, your team either has a depth problem or they've got a problem of having lazy coaches. Because good coaches, real head coaches, real position coaches, coordinators, they foster competition. So if you already know who your starters are and your starters already know that they're starters, how do you inspire your players to reach their full potential on the field if they're not looking over their shoulder, knowing that they can lose their job to the hungry guy right below them on the depth chart on any given day, right? Now, obviously, we can sit here and look at Miami and say, yeah, you know what, we're pretty sure Darian Mensah is the starter at quarterback. We're pretty sure Damon Wilson is a starter at defensive end. Xavier Lucas is going to be a starter at corner. It doesn't mean you don't foster competition every day and make sure these guys know if you don't perform to your highest level and the guy below you is outplaying you, you can lose your job and you can lose reps. To me, that mentality is non-negotiable. And if you have a coaching staff who isn't enforcing that sort of mentality, you probably are watching a terrible football team, if that's the mentality there. And then the other thing is, and I think this is kind of a reminder of how far a program like Miami has come. And I think Miami's growth over the past 4 years is undeniable. If your program isn't deep, then maybe you can say, hey, we know who our starters are because there's a really big drop-off to the number 2, number 3 guys, right? That's the case with certain programs out there. I know a program like Florida State, they've got some talented players. They don't have the sort of depth and the sort of roster that Miami has right now. So maybe you could say your starters are pretty good, backups not so much. You look at a team like Miami, I can say in my humble opinion, maybe your 2 best edge rushers are Damon Wilson and Hayden Lowe, but that doesn't mean Armando Blunt and Marquise Lightfoot and Herbert Scroggins, Booker Pickett Jr., that doesn't mean those guys aren't pushing the ones who I think might be the 2 very best every single day, and I wouldn't be shocked if in the opening game, if, Marquise Lightfoot were starting instead of Hayden Lowe, just for, nothing would surprise me because I know the competition is fierce. And that's the sort of mentality and the depth you need to have a successful college football team. I got shout out to our guy, Victor, who's been an everydayer since day one. He says, hey, Donno, we're always asking, Is the U officially back? And when can we finally say that? Like right now, we're getting predicted to land the number 3 running back in recruiting. Yeah, we got those Myson Johnson-Cook crystal balls. We're predicted to land the number 1 offensive tackle again. Yeah, Mark Matthews hopefully will be a Cane after we landed Cantwell next year. We just landed the number 3 quarterback in the class, and we keep getting predicted for other big-time players. Is Miami officially back when you see stuff like this happening? I side with Mario Cristobal on this. The U is back to work. Like, for me, if you're going to use that word, back, I'm not going to throw that out there until we win Natty number 6. Came pretty close a couple months ago and had Miami finish the job against Indiana. My show the next day, I would have been throwing that B word around like you wouldn't believe, but I'm not throwing it around until we get there. This recruiting stuff is, listen, it's great. Like that, in fact, the recruiting, the success Miami's having is they have an opportunity at maybe landing the number 1 class in the country or certainly top 5 again. That just exemplifies what Mario Cristobal said when he talked about back to work. Like, you are back to work. Miami is now stacking talent the way they used to stack it in the Butch Davis days, in the Dennis Erickson, the Jimmy Johnson days. You're stacking talent the way you did when Miami was a national contender every year. You're getting back to that with the way you're out there, out recruiting and out hustling your rivals and getting the best possible players to come to Miami or stay in Miami, because we're tired of the top players leaving the area. That's why it's so big we landed a guy like Nick Lanier. Like, you're getting these top players to stay in the area. But we're not BACK until we win number 6. Like, you can't get me to budge on that. That to me is non-negotiable. We're not back until that happens. But listen, man, I'm hoping Miami can land the number 1 class. We talked yesterday about 4-star running back Myson Johnson-Cook. Everybody is predicting him to land at Miami, which is fantastic. And I hope Miami can get his verbal commitment sooner rather than later. I was looking at, shout out to friend of the show, Gabby Urrutia. I was looking at his mock 2027 class, and God, I hope he's right about this. And usually his mock classes are pretty good, pretty good. He's got Miami flipping both DJ Jacobs, 5-star defensive end who's committed to Ohio State, just visited last weekend, and he's got Miami flipping another elite defensive end, Jaiden Bryant, who's currently committed to LSU. If Miami can get both of those guys, arguably the top 2 edges in the class, certainly there's no argument with DJ Jacobs, one of the top players in the class, period. If Miami can land both of them, flip both of them, and they will use this very spatula when they do it with the U on it, if we can pull that off, we're going to get closer to that 4-letter BACK word, but we're not there yet. Huge thank you and shout out for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure you check out the Everydayer Club. Click the link in the show description below or go to lockedoncanes.supercast.com. We're going to have, for those who are super interested in the ever-changing NIL and transfer portal landscape in college football, excuse me, I'm losing my voice here for a second. For those who are interested in all the legal stuff going on, the ghost transfers, the executive orders, we're going to have an interview later today, coming out tonight, with sports and entertainment lawyer Alan K. Fertel. Alan's been on with us before, breaking down the Darian Mensah lawsuit and all this other stuff going on. He's going to break down for us the changing transfer landscape and whether or not the NCAA can actually enforce their rules. Because, of course, this particular rule was at least partially inspired by Xavier Lucas last year. Call it the Lucas rule, the Miami rule. It's always about the U. We'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.